A hobo is a migratory worker or homeless vagabond, especially one who is penniless. The term originated in the Western probably Northwestern United States around 1890. Unlike tramps who work only when they are forced to, and bums who do not work at all, hobos are itinerant workers. Etymology: the origin of the term is unknown. According to etymologist Anatoly Liberman, the only certain detail about its origin is the word was first noticed in American English circa 1890. Liberman points out that many folk etymologies fail to answer the question, why did the word become widely known in California by the early 90s? Author Todd DePastino has suggested it may in fact be a race and was derived from the term ho boy, meaning farm hand, or a greeting such as ho, boy. Bill Bryson suggests in Made in America that it could either come from the railroad greeting, ho, bo, or a syllabic abbreviation of homeward bound. It could also come from the words homeless boy. H. L. Mencken, in his The American Language, wrote, "Tramps and hobos are commonly lumped together, but see themselves as sharply differentiated. A hobo or bo is simply a migratory laborer. He may take some longish holidays, but soon or late he returns to work. A tramp never works if it can be avoided. He simply travels. Lower than either is the bum, who neither works nor travels, save when impelled to motion by the police." History: it is unclear exactly when hobos first appeared on the American railroading scene. With the end of the American Civil War in the 1860s, many discharged veterans returning home began hopping freight trains. Others looking for work on the American frontier followed the railways west aboard freight trains in the late 19th century. In 1906, Professor Lael Shafee, after an exhaustive study, put the number of tramps in America at about 500,000. His article, What Tramps Cost Nation, was published by the New York Telegraph in 1911, when he estimated the number had surged to 700,000. The number of hobos increased greatly during the Great Depression era of the 1930s. With no work and no prospects at home, many decided to travel for free by freight train and try their luck elsewhere. Life as a hobo was dangerous. In addition to the problems of being itinerant, poor, and far from home and support, plus the hostility of many train crews, they faced the railroad security staff, nicknamed bulls, who had a reputation of violence against trespassers. Moreover, riding on a freight train is dangerous in itself. British poet W. H. Davis, author of the autobiography of a supertramp, lost a foot when he fell under the wheels when trying to jump aboard a train. It was easy to be trapped between cars, as one could freeze to death in bad weather. When freezer cars were loaded at an ice factory, any hobo inside was likely to be killed. According to Ted Conover in Rolling Nowhere, as many as 20,000 people were living a hobo life in North America. Modern freight trains are much faster and thus harder to ride than in the 1930s, but they can still be boarded in rail yards. Conventions: General: there are numerous hobo conventions throughout the country and the year, but the smaller ones tend to come and go. The ephemeral ways of hobo conventions are mostly dependent on the resources of their hosts. Some conventions are part of railroad conventions or railroad days. Others are quasi-private affairs, hosted by long-time hobos. Still others are ad hoc, that is, they are held surreptitiously on private land. Some of these conventions are held in abandoned quarries, along major rivers. Most non-mainstream conventions are held at current or historical railroad stops. The most notable is the National Hobo Convention held in Bright, Iowa. National Hobo Convention: in 1900, the Town Fathers of Bright, Iowa, invited Tourist Union No. 63 to bring their annual convention to town. A hiatus of 33 years from 1901 to 1933 preceded continuation from 1934 since. The National Hobo Convention has been held on the second weekend in August every year since. Historical records: Hobo Museum. The Bright Hobo Museum exhibits a smattering of hobo history and lore. Initially just a hobo convention museum, in the late 1990s it evolved into a true hobo history museum. Public Library, A shelf in the Bright Public Library offers a hodgepodge of Hobo literature and history. This library complements others around the country, and private collections. Portraits of Kings and Queens. La Anne Castillo, a local artist and a hobo painter, exhibits a portrait collection of hobo kings and queens since 1900. All of her paintings are taken from photos even current kings and queens. Most hobos can't sit still long enough to have a portrait painted. None has ever been painted live. Entertainment. Formal entertainment begins before dusk, and is provided by a mix of active hobos, extended hobo families and non-hobo wannabes. Informal. Late after dark, the crowd leaves and the campfire becomes more informal and genuine. Satellite groups spring up. Stories are told small and tall, poetry is recited, and chants are sung to the muted vibrations of banjos, guitars and harmonicas. Lighting of the fire. Activities officially begin the Thursday of the convention weekend with the lighting of the campfire and exercise of some hobo cultural traditions before the opening entertainment. Cemetery visit. Friday morning, many visit the hobo corner of the cemetery to pay tribute to those who have caught the westbound with a hobo memorial service preceded by a local contingent of ex-military color guard. Names of deceased hobos are recited. Poetry reading. Friday evening around 5 o'clock. The poetry reading attracts participants and a small crowd of onlookers. Elections of Hobo King and Queen. Hobo King candidates are screened the days before the annual King and Queen election and coronation, for their knowledge and history of riding trains, and how well they would represent the hobo community. A quasi-qualified candidate is occasionally allowed to run. Any woman who is part of the hobo community may run for Hobo Queen. Hobo Days Parade. The Saturday morning Hobo Days Parade in the town pavilion displays hobo personnel and advertises those running for Hobo King and Queen one last chance to campaign before the election in the early afternoon. Following the parade, mulligan stew is served to hundreds of people in the city park, cooked by local Boy Scouts. In early afternoon, the Hobo King and Queen are then elected by the volume of crowd applause, hobos, local citizens and town visitors alike. Non-hobo entertainment, a carnival, flea market and an annual auto show are also part of the festivities. The din of stock car races on the south end of Bright fills the evening air. Culture, expressions used through 1940s, many hobo terms have become part of common language, such as big house, glad rags, main drag, and others. Hobo signs. To cope with the uncertainties of hobo life, hobos developed a system of symbols, or a visual code. Hobos would write this code with chalk or coal to provide directions, information, and warnings to others in the brotherhood. A symbol would indicate "turn right here," "beware of hostile railroad police," "dangerous dog," "food available here," and so on. Some commonly used signs, a cross signifies angel food, that is, food served to the hobos after a sermon. A triangle with hand signifies that the homeowner has a gun. A horizontal zigzag signifies a barking dog. A square missing its top line signifies it is safe to camp in that location. A top hat and a triangle signify wealth. A spearhead signifies a warning to defend oneself. A circle with two parallel arrows means get out fast, as hobos are not welcome in the area. Two interlocked circles signify handcuffs. A caduceus symbol signifies the house has a doctor living in it. A cross with a smiley face in one of the corners means the doctor at this office will treat hobos free of charge. A cat signifies a kind lady lives here. A wavy line above an X means fresh water and a campsite. Three diagonal lines mean it's not a safe place. A square with a slanted roof with an X through it means that the house has already been burned, or tricked by another hobo and is not a trusting house. Two shovels signify that work was available. Another version of the hobo code exists as a display in the Steamtown National Historic Site at Scranton, Pennsylvania, operated by the National Park Service. There is an exhibit of hobo codes at the National Cryptologic Museum in Annapolis Junction, Maryland. The Free Art and Technology Lab released a QR hobo code, with a QR stenciler, in July 2011. Ethical code. An ethical code was created by Tourist Union No. 63 during its 1889 National Hobo Convention in St. Louis, Missouri. This code was voted upon as a concrete set of laws to govern the nationwide hobo body. It reads this way: decide your own life, don't let another person run or rule you. When in town, always respect the local law and officials, and try to be a gentleman at all times. Don't take advantage of someone who is in a vulnerable situation, locals or other hobos. Always try to find work, even if temporary, and always seek out jobs nobody wants. By doing so you not only help a business along, but ensure employment should you return to that town again. When no employment is available, make your own work by using your added talents at crafts. Do not allow yourself to become a stupid drunk and set a bad example for locals' treatment of other hobos. When jungling in town, respect handouts, do not wear them out. Another hobo will be coming along who will need them as badly, if not worse than you. Always respect nature, do not leave garbage where you are jungling. If in a community jungle, always pitch in and help. Try to stay clean, and boil up wherever possible. When traveling, ride your train respectfully, take no personal chances, cause no problems with the operating crew or host railroad, act like an extra crew member. Do not cause problems in a train yard, another hobo will be coming along who will need passage through that yard. Do not allow other hobos to molest children, expose all molesters to authorities, they are the worst garbage to infest any society. Help all runaway children, and try to induce them to return home. Help your fellow hobos whenever and wherever needed, you may need their help someday. If present at a hobo court and you have testimony, give it. Whether for or against the accused, your voice counts. Notable persons, notable hobos: Jack Black, Charles Elmer Fox, author of Tales of an American Hobo; Morris W. Graham, a.k.a. Steam Train Maury; Joe Hill, Monty Home, author of Once a Hobo, the autobiography of the Monty Home, died in 2006 at age 89. Leon Ray Livingston, a.k.a. A Number 1, Sean Malone, a.k.a. Meandering Malone; Christopher McCandless, a.k.a. Alexander Supertramp; Harry McClintock; Utah Phillips; Robert Joseph Silveria, Jr., a.k.a. Sidetrack, who killed 34 other hobos before turning himself into the authorities; T-Bone Slim; Bertha Thompson, a.k.a. Boxcar Bertha was widely believed to be a real person. Sister of the Road was penned by Ben Reitman and presented as an autobiography. Jim Tully, an author who penned several pulp fiction books, 1928 through 1945. Stephen Gene Wold, a.k.a. C6 Steve. In mainstream culture, examples of characters based on hobos include Emmett Kelly's Weary Willie, and Red Skelton's Freddy the Freeloader. Books: All the Strange Hours, The Excavation of a Life, by Loren Isley, 1975. ISBN 978-0-8032-6741-1, American Travels of a Dutch Hobo 1923-1926, by Gerard Lieflinger, N.L., 1984, ISBN 978-0813808888. The Areas of My Expertise by John Hodgman, humor book which features a lengthy section on hobos, including a list of 700 hobo names which spawned an online effort to illustrate the complete list. Bottom Dogs, by Edward Dahlberg; Beggars of Life by Jim Tully; Evasion by Anonymous; From Coast to Coast with Jack London by A No-1; Hard Travel in the Hobo and His History, by Kenneth Alsop. ISBN 978-0-340-02572-7. Hobo, by Eddie Joe Cotton, 2002. ISBN 978-0-609-60738-1, The Hobo, The Sociology of the Homeless Man, by Nels Anderson, 1923. The Hobo Handbook, A Field Guide to Living by Your Own Rules, by Josh Mack, 2011. ISBN 978-1-4405-1227-8, Ironweed by William Kennedy, 1983. A Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, also adapted for a 1987 film. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair contains a section in which the main character, Jurgis Rudkus, abandons his family in Chicago and becomes a hobo for a while. Knights of the Road, by Roger A. Bruns, 1980. ISBN 978-0-416-00721-3. Lonesome Road, by Thomas Mannion, 1941. Lonesome Traveler, by Jack Kerouac, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Dulain by Kate DiCamillo, Muzzlers, Guzzlers, and Good Yeggs by Joe Coleman, Of Mice and Men, by John Steinbeck, On the Road, by Jack Kerouac, Once a Hobo. By Monty Home, One More Train to Ride, The Underground World of Modern American Hobos by Clifford Williams. Riding the Rails, Teenagers on the Move During the Great Depression by Errol Lincoln UYS, ISBN 978-0-415-94575-2, Riding Toward Everywhere by William T. Volman, 2008. ISBN 978-0-06-125675-2, The Road, by Jack London, Rolling Nowhere, Riding the Rails with America's Hobos by Ted Conova, paperback, 304 pages, publisher, Vintage, ISBN 0-375-72786-8, Sister of the Road, The Autobiography of Boxcar Bertha, Dr. Ben Reitman's Stumptown Kid, by Carol Gorman and Ron J. Finley, Tales of an American Hobo, by Charles Elmer Fox, Tramping on Life and More Miles, by Harry Kemp, Waiting for Nothing, Tom Cromer, You Can't Win, by Jack Black, Comics, Kings in Disguise, by James Vance and Dan Burr, Laugh Out Loud Cats, Week comic by Adam Cofford, featuring two anthropomorphic cats as hobos. Many cartoons depict hobos as main or secondary characters, hobo-related activities such as traveling by train, with a bindle, or in company of hobos. For example, 8-Ball Bunny with Bugs Bunny, Merry Melody's Hobo Gadget Band, Mouse Wreckers and MGM's Henpecked Hobos. The Avenger and Master Archer in Marvel Comics, Hawkeye is aware of, and can read Hobo code in Matt Fraction and David Ajar's 2012 run on the character. USA Comics number 5 had a character, Butch Brogan, alias Fighting Hobo, that helps save a kidnapped puppy in The Dog Nappers. USA Comics number 2 introduced Vagabond, a police officer named Pat Murphy who created an alter ego, Chauncey Throttlebottom III, a well-spoken hobo, to fight crime. Movies: Wild Boys of the Road, directed by William A. Wellman, Sullivan's Travels, directed by Preston Sturges. Emperor of the North Pole, also known as Emperor of the North, directed by Robert Aldrich. OCLCA 70283150. Loosely based on Jack London's The Road. Hard Times, also known as The Street Fighter, directed by Walter Hill, and starring Charles Bronson and James Coburn. The $1 Billion Hobo, starring Tim Conway and Will Gier. The Journey of Natty Gann, young girl riding the rails to find her father. Ironweed, directed by Ha, copyright Ktababe & Co. and based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by William Kennedy, who also wrote the screenplay. Stars Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep, with Carol Baker, Michael O'Keefe, Diane Venora, Frederick Gwynne, Nathan Lane, and Tom Waits in supporting roles. Life Stinks, directed by and starring Mel Brooks. Tokyo Godfathers, an anime directed by Satoshi Kon. Into the Wild, directed by Sean Penn, based on John Krakauer's non-fiction book about Christopher McCandless. Resurrecting the Champ, starring Samuel L. Jackson and Josh Hartnett, directed by Rod Lurie. Kit Kittredge, An American Girl, starring Abigail Breslin, Chris O'Donnell, Julia Ormond and Max Thieriot. Directed by Patricia Rosemer. Hobo with a Shotgun, an exploitation film directed by Jason Eisner and written by John Davis, starring Rutger Hauer as a vigilante hobo. The Muppets, the film features a character named Hobo Joe and even featured somewhat not hobos. They later appeared in the sequel Muppets Most Wanted. Man of Steel depicts Clark Kent living as a homeless itinerant worker before ultimately taking the mantle of Superman and finding work as a reporter at the Daily Planet. Documentaries: American Experience, Riding the Rails, a PBS documentary by Lexi Loveal and Michael Uys, narrated by Richard Thomas, detailing the hobos of the Great Depression, with interviews of those who rode the rails during those years. Hobo, a documentary by John T. Davis, following the life of a hobo on his travels through the United States. The Human Experience, a documentary by Charles Kinane. The First Experience follows Jeffrey and his brother Clifford to the streets of New York City, where the boys live with the homeless for a week in one of the coldest winters on record. The boys look for hope and camaraderie among their homeless companions, learning how to survive on the streets. The American Hobo, a documentary narrated by Ernest Bourne featuring interviews with Merle Haggard and James Michener. Songs: musicians known for hobo songs include Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Utah Phillips, Baby Grams, Jimmy Rogers, Seasick Steve, and Boxcar Willie. Examples of hobo songs include Big Rock Candy Mountain by Harry McClintock, recorded by various artists including Burl Ives, Tom Waits, Lisa Loeb, Baby Grams, The Restarts and Harry Dean Stanton. Hallelujah, I'm a Bum, recorded by Harry McClintock, Al Jolson, and others, Hard Travelin', and Hobo's Lullaby by Woody Guthrie. Here Comes Your Man by the Pixies is about hobos traveling on trains in California and dying because of earthquakes. Hobo by the Hackensaw Boys, Hobo Bill, I Ain't Got No Home, and Mysteries of a Hobo's Life by Cisco Houston, Hobo Bill's Last Ride by Jimmy Rogers, also recorded by Manfred Mann's Earth Band, Hobo Blues, and The Hobo by John Lee Hooker, Hobo Chang Bar by Captain Beefheart, Hobo Flats by Oliver Nelson, Hobo Jungle by The Band, Hobo Kinda Man by Lynyrd Skynyrd, The Hobo Song by John Prine also covered by Johnny Cash, The Hobo Song by Jack Bonus which was covered by Jerry Garcia's bluegrass group, Old and in the Way, Hobo's Lullaby, written by Gerbell Reeves, recorded by various artists including Woody Guthrie, Ilo Guthrie, Emila Harris, Pete Seeger, The Kingston Trio, and Ramblin' Jack Elliott, Hobos on Parade by Shannon Wright, I Am a Lonesome Hobo, Only a Hobo, and Ramblin' Gamblin' Willie by Bob Dylan, Jack Straw by Robert Hunter and Bob Weir, Jesus Blood Never Failed Me Yet, a recording of a hobo singing on a London street, by composer Gavin Briars. King of the Road by Roger Miller, Kalkurin Valsi by Arthur Kylander, La Currency Nnen Lokari by Hiski Saloma, Last of the Hobo Kings by Mary Gautier, Like a Hobo by Charlie Winston, Mary Lane by Fred Eagle Smith, Morning Glory by Tim Buckley, lyrics by Larry Beckett, Never Tire of the Road by Andy Irvine, Papa Hobo, and Hobo's Blues by Paul Simon, Ramblin' Man by Hank Williams Sr. Sergeant Small by Andy Irvine, Streets of London by Ralph McTell, Waiting for a Train by Jimmy Rogers, Hopscotch Willie by Stephen Michmas, Western Hobo by the Carter Family, Hobo Flats by Count Basie, Hobo, You Can't Ride This Train by Louis Armstrong, Television, Mannix, Episode 22 To Quote a Dead Man, Criminal Minds, Episode 5 Catching Out, Mad Men, Episode 8, The Hobo Code, The Littlest Hobo, in The Simpsons, Grandpa explains hobo symbols to Bart. See also, Freight Train Riders of America, A Brotherhood of Hobos, Free-Eyed Thopping, Hobo Nickel, an art form associated with hobos, Hobo, designed by Morris Fuller Benton for American Type Founders in 1910, Kirby, Texas, the hobo capital of Texas, shoulder pole, wobbly lingo, the jargon of the industrial workers of the world, references, notes. Further reading